give us the drug war that we have today. And I would put that as disapproval of pleasure and intoxication, fear of the risks of addiction, and the benefit to law enforcement in pursuing their objectives.
And so those are the things that we're up against when we're saying, let's end the drug war. I remember when I first heard, I came to the Libertarian Party and heard, well, you know, we need to end the drug war. And I said, my hair just stood on end.
Sure.
You know, it was like,
Exactly.
what are you talking about, end the drug war? It's, you know, we'd have people drunk in the streets.
Right.
Well, we already do. And
Right.
and you know, no, that is my question. What, you know, we do already have people that have the personal liberty, the personal civil right to go into a bar and have a few cocktails and then drive home. They're intoxicated. If they have an issue with the intoxication and driving their car, then let's say they get in an accident or they hit somebody, unfortunately, or something like that happens, we prosecute them for being intoxicated behind the wheel. But we don't know that they're behind the wheel and intoxicated until there's an issue there. So, you know, what is it that we talk to people about when we're talking about this whole issue of ending the drug war? Am I clear in what my question is there?
Well, as I understood you, you're saying, well, wouldn't everybody be an addict if we didn't have these laws against drugs?
I've heard that. I've heard that from people.
And I think that there are a lot of good lessons to draw from very similar things. Just take coffee. Caffeine is a drug. I use caffeine on a daily basis. I seek caffeine on a daily basis. And some would argue,
real personal with me right now.
Some would argue that I have an addiction to caffeine.
Right.
But I've learned that if I have more than 2 cups of coffee, I get a headache, I become irritable. It's bad for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I self-regulate how much coffee I drink or how much caffeine I use. And caffeine is a very popular drug in this country. And despite the popularity of coffee, how many people do you know that are no-dose users, where they take the caffeine pills in the morning? There just aren't that many people, because the concentrated dose is not as pleasurable and it's not as functional as incorporating coffee as a part of your daily routine. And I think we could look at Peru as another example where cocaine is, they take the coca plant and they seep the leaves and make coca tea, and it is a mild stimulant like coffee that they use for the altitude. And so they have incorporated the substance into their lives, but they're not all cocaine addicts,
right,
snorting up and running around crazed and, you know, showing superhuman strength, which is the myth that goes along with cocaine. It's that when there is freedom, people choose a natural level that works well for them. So we wouldn't see huge amounts of people rushing in to use currently illegal drugs. And I would go further and say, let's even look within illegal drugs. And there are on the order of 20 million regular cannabis or marijuana users in this country. And that's the largest drug, most popular drug by far. If you look at all the rest of the illegal drugs combined, and my facts may not be precise, but they're in the ballpark, there are around 1 million for all the rest combined.
Oh, really?
And they're all illegal.
More bigger than that, didn't you, David?
So regular users. You probably have a lot more periodic or recreational users, but regular users, it's on the order of 1 million. So these are all illegal drugs. But there's even big differences of how much people like or want the different drugs that are also illegal. And part of that is that if you look, there are 100 million people who drink alcohol, 60 million people who smoke tobacco, 20 million people who smoke cannabis, on the order of 1 million who use the harder drugs. I mean, for lack of a better way of describing it, on a regular basis. So part of it is who's the minority. And who gets, you know, since there are 100 million drinkers, that's popular. And it's a lot harder to make illegal something that's widely popular. And as you look at something like heroin, there are very few heroin users in this country. And it's because it's a pretty serious, heavy-duty drug, and it's a very particular sort of person who actually
picks that up.
Feels like they benefit from that.
Yeah. And what about the segment of society that says, well, if you decriminalize drugs, make them legal, you're going to have teenagers running out and getting stoned,
and their teachers are going to be stoned, and your neighbors are going to be stoned, and
right. Well, there's a good lesson we can draw from the Netherlands, where the policymakers decided that they wanted to make pot boring. That was what informed their approach, and so they created coffee shops, which are in technical terms they're technically illegal, but they're tolerated, and they're for adults. So if you want to smoke marijuana in Amsterdam, you visit one of these coffee shops, and you smoke. You can select from behind the counter, and you smoke your pot, and you go on your way. And the youth of the country actually think the people who frequent those shops are kind of pathetic or tourists. So they're not. They've succeeded in their policy goal of
not
if you will, of
glamorizing it.
not glamorizing it. But the statistics are interesting as well. In this country, more kids have tried marijuana than have tried tobacco.
Wow.
Wow.
So one is regulated, one is illegal, and which one's easier to get? That's a key question. Key thing about the failure of our existing policy. And more kids have tried cannabis in this country than have in the Netherlands, where it is tolerated or
And
treated
easily-
much more civilly
easily
than
accessed.
it is here. So for a couple of reasons, if you regulate it, you can probably control youth access better. Number one. Number two, if you made access easier, you're not going to have a wholesale run into all of these illegal drugs. They're less popular because fewer people like them and work for them. And so, these are the sorts of forces that are at work.
I think it'd be interesting to discuss what the benefits to our society would be if we did end the drug war and actually regulated. This is such an interesting part of the discussion. If we actually regulated these drugs, if you go to 7-Eleven and get a bottle of Jack Daniels, a pack of smokes, and maybe an ounce of marijuana, then all of a sudden the government now is gotten in the picture. It's taxable.
Right.
It's probably a better product because you're not getting it on the street. You're getting it from probably a certified, manufacturer.
You'd have product liability.
You'd have product liability, exactly. And so then there's the whole money issue of all the billions of dollars that we spend on the DEA agency and the whole drug war, the whole gangland thing. All of a sudden we wouldn't need to have anybody killing anybody for territory because nobody would have territories. So this is a huge discussion on why we should end the drug war. And this is actually what won me over when we talked about this many years ago, this particular discussion that we're going to have about that.
Well, pretty much be the end of the gangs, wouldn't it? I mean, if there was not the
I would
easy
think.
money, because that's what the attraction is for the most part.
Well, certainly it would, they would, I guess in some sense, I don't know if we could imagine a world with no gangs. There were gangs doing other things before they were doing the drug trade.
Thing.
But I was at a conference with a judge, an old guy from New Orleans. And he didn't say very much, but at one point he raised his hand and he said, we have in Louisiana the highest murder rate in the country. But it's not Louisiana. It's New Orleans. And it's not New Orleans. It's one parish in New Orleans.
Parish.
He said, so it's one neighborhood. And the reason that this is happening is that the way the markets for crack cocaine have developed in this neighborhood is that dealers sell on consignment. And so they get the drugs and they have to bring the money back. If they don't bring the money back, they are murdered. Swift justice is brought in this one part of this one community in New Orleans. And that to me really put into stark relief the kind of effects we have as a result of the drug war. Because it's in the black market, it's because it's underground, that we have the associated crimes like murder that come with the drug war.